a death that shocked a country and now the world. Alberto Nisman was a prosecutor who accused government officials of covering up Iran's alleged involvement in the bombing of a Jewish center in Buenos Aires, Argentina. 85 people were murdered that day in a horrific bombing. He was found dead hours before he was scheduled to appear at a closed-door hearing and testify, give his conclusions about the bombing and who did it. Officials, including the president of Argentina, Cristina de Kirchner, first claimed it was a suicide, but then in a stunning reversal, a couple days later this week, she now says it was not suicide. Joining me is Mark Dubowitz, a friend of Alberto Nisman's, executive director of the Foundation for Defense of Democracies. You were his friend, you knew him. This case was something that he was passionate about, and I believe he had said to you and to others he knew and felt that he was risking his life by pursuing the truth.
Erin, that's right. Alberto was relentless and focused in his pursuit of this investigation and for justice of the victims of that attack. And he was threatened in the past, and he knew that he was in the crosshairs of some very serious and very dangerous people. And yet he kept on. He kept on, and he was ready to go and testify that morning. Alberto kept on. Alberto was a very courageous man, and he also was somebody who believed very strongly in the justice system, in following the facts and following the evidence to where it took him. And he was willing to go all the way to the highest levels of the Argentine government in order to find who was responsible. And in his conclusions, they have made part of the report public now that he was going to be presenting at this hearing. He said that there was going to be evidence of the existence of a sophisticated criminal plot deliberately conjured to cover up and provide impunity to the Iranians accused in the investigation of the attack of this community center. So he had evidence then that went back to Iran. He had evidence that went back to Iran, to senior Iranian government officials, including the former president of Iran and the former minister of defense of Iran, people, by the way, who still serve in the highest echelons of the Iranian government, and who he had found substantial evidence to indict these people for their role in that terrorist attack. And in fact, it led to multiple Interpol red notices, international criminal warrants for their arrest. And so he had come to that conclusion. There was also, this week, of course, much speculation about the Argentine government itself and its involvement with the Iranian government, that perhaps the Argentinian government knew about these conclusions and had also realized that Iran was involved, of course, allegedly, but that they believed that, and that in exchange for oil and other deals with Iran, they looked the other way. Exactly right. Alberto put together a 289-page report. Alberto was always putting together very detailed and very lengthy reports with substantial evidence showing criminality, and in this case, implicating the president of Argentina, the foreign minister of Argentina, and senior Argentine government officials in a massive cover-up to exonerate these senior Iranian officials in exchange for oil and goods and potentially weaponry. So he went so far as to say in his report that he had the evidence that Iran did this and killed these 85 people and did this bombing, and then that the Argentinian government colluded with Iran to cover it up. Exactly, that the Argentine government actually colluded with Iran to cover it up in order to get Iranian oil, in order to export Argentine goods. And based on my experience, Erin, I spent a decade looking at sanctions busting. This oil for goods scheme was not about oil and grain. This was about potentially a massive money laundering illicit finance operation. And so what happens now when there was a survey done this week of Argentinians, 70% of them say that he was murdered. Obviously that's the feeling in Argentina. There were protests on his behalf. What happens now? And now, of course, you have the president of Argentina, who he had implicated in this cover-up. She said it was a suicide and now has abruptly changed course and said it isn't. So what happens now? Well, I think many people are skeptical that nothing is really going to happen in Argentina. I mean, where is the next brave prosecutor who's going to pursue this case, the murder of Alberto, with the same relentless focus and drive, who will have the courage to do so, knowing that if he or she does so, this may be the result? The United States has been silent so far. Alberto Nisman was very well known to many in the United States government. He was very well liked. He was very well respected. But the United States hasn't said anything. There are some who say, well, that is because the United States is pursuing a nuclear deal with Iran and they don't want to upset Iran right now. Is that true, you think? Erin, I don't know the reason, and I'm really surprised and saddened that the Obama administration hasn't issued a formal statement. Alberto was very well known in Washington and very well respected. I was in many government meetings with Alberto, with senior government officials and counterterrorism officials, and many of them considered Alberto to be a hero. And not only a hero for investigating what happened in Buenos Aires, but putting together a report that detailed the elaborate illicit Iranian networks that reached all the way into the United States, including responsible for an aborted plot at JFK Airport that would have killed more Americans than 9/11. So this man was a hero to senior government officials. Why the silence from the administration?
Where are they now? And you talk about him being a man of courage. There's so many people who hear this and say, this is a man, clearly a man of courage, who fought for the truth, fought for his convictions. He was threatened with death multiple times during this most recent investigation. I believe even at the end of last week, he had emailed reporters talking about threats he was getting, that he was afraid. Yet he went through the weekend and he was going to go in and present this. Nothing would stop him. What is it about his character that made him able to do something that, frankly, so few people would do?
It's, you know, it's amazing. I mean, Alberto was kind of man. He was incredibly warm and incredibly generous with his time. He was somebody who I think believed very passionately in justice. I think he met with the families of those terrorist attacks, and they made him understand that he was the only one who could actually find the truth. There was nobody else who could actually find out what happened to their loved ones. And I think Alberto took that seriously and personally and passionately and pursued that in the face of great danger.
And we can all hope that the right thing is done and that they find the truth in this, that someone is unafraid to do so, because obviously powerful people are involved. Thank you so much.
Thanks for having me, Erin.
And we'll be back again next weekend, both Saturday and Sunday, right here on CNN International. Thank you so much for joining us.